the Basquatch Hunter.
All right, well, thank you. My name is Mike McKinstry, as he said. I'm the host of a TV show called The Basquatch Hunter. It's on cable on the Pursuit channel, and it's on YouTube, Instagram, pretty much everywhere they let me post it, it's on there. You can find it on a free Pursuit Up streaming app as well if you don't have the cable channel. But I travel the country with these kayaks, just like this one and the ones we have on display over at the Mainstream Tackle Outdoors booth. My other ones are over there. And all depending on what kind of water I'm in is what kayak I use. But this is my main rig right here. This one I've had in the oceans, I've had in the Great Lakes. I fought some fish as big as my kayak or bigger, and fought some panfish in it too and had a lot of fun. But I'm gonna show you guys why I chose kayak fishing, what got me into it, and how I kind of set this one up. This one's kind of set up for the most part the way I use it all the time, minus my fish finder screens in my truck. I forgot it, but other than that, this is how I set up my kayak every day when I go out fishing, no matter what species it is. So first thing you're gonna notice, I have a pedal drive on this kayak, so I don't have to paddle it. I can paddle it. I keep my paddle right here next to me in case I get in really shallow water, then I can still use my paddle and it moves perfectly fine. Or if I have to turn really sharp. This kayak is really big, really bulky, so it turns like a diesel school bus. I need the whole entire pool to maybe do a full circle, or I do the Austin Powers 22-point turn in the golf cart kind of thing. My smaller kayaks are more agile, more like a sports car, where this one's more like that, the Cadillac bus, I call it. So the pedal drive will get me moving about 4.5 miles an hour without too much effort. This one specifically is the only one in the market that's got a motor option built in as well. So I have a motor in my truck. I can clip into this, and I have a remote, and this turns into a motorized unit. So without having to put a different motor on it or change anything, this can be electric or pedals or paddle all on the same trip in the same day. It's super easy. At the end of the seminar, I'll have my kayak up against the wall so you guys can look at it and touch it and ask more questions up close. It's kind of hard to see it from far away. But this one has a built-in battery box in the back with built-in lighting. It has pre-wired for fish finder for the motor. Everything's pre-wired when you buy this kayak. I know the biggest question I always get when I start telling you how cool it is, people will go, well, how much is it? This one's $2,500 without the motor and $3,500 with the motor. So it's not as much as people think, but it's definitely cheaper than the bass boat. And the price of it was intriguing, but what got me into kayaking was more of the adventure. When I had a bass boat, does anybody here have a bass boat or a boat they fish out of, like a motorized boat? A couple guys. So when you're in a boat, you're very limited to where you can go. You need a certain depth, you need a certain width, you have to have a boat launch, you have to make sure that if you break a trolling or a prop, or anything like that, or a trolling motor, make sure you have a way to get back. You can't really paddle a boat that easily. What's cool about a kayak is it can go everywhere the boats can go, but it goes everywhere the boats can't go too. And that's what drew me to kayak fishing. I went from a bass boat that I had to replace props and prop drives and repair it all the time every year. I went from doing that to being able to fish anywhere I want. I can go in the big lakes, I go in the ocean, I go in St. Clair, the Great Lakes. I'm not limited to where I can fish. I'm only limited to where I can find a way to get to the lake, and that's it. So I can drag this to the woods. I can find a boat or a lake that doesn't have a boat ramp, sorry. Pretty much anywhere I want to go with a kayak that's public, I can get to. And that's what drew me to kayak fishing. So this one specifically has storage in the front, it has storage on the sides and interior, has storage in the back, so I have plenty of options. So in a bass boat, you can fit 50 rods, you can fit all the tackle you want, you have all the features you need. A bass boat is pretty luxurious compared to a kayak. So for a kayak, you have to be a little bit more smart where you put accessories, and you also have to make sure that you don't bring too much stuff. So you can see I only have 2 fishing rods with me. I can fit 5 in this kayak, which is plenty. I have a whole crate back here full of tackle. I keep 5 trays with me, which is also more than enough. I don't hoard tackle like I used to in a bass boat. Then I have the interior storage and everything else right there too. So let me pedal back over here if it'll let me do a circle. I told you the guys this thing doesn't steer that well, so I'm gonna use some paddle assistance. So in a wide open lake, like Lake St. Clair, Lake Michigan, I can turn pretty easily there because I have more room, and this thing gets moving pretty quick. In a small pool like this, a little bit tougher to get those sharp turns in a bigger boat. But the reason why I use the big boats, with it being difficult to maneuver, with it being a little bit slower than the skinnier boats, the reason why I use the big boats is for stability. I have the stability to fish in the Gulf of Mexico. I can fish for shark, fish for marlin, for gators in Louisiana. I'm not limited to anything in a big boat like this. I have stability for days. These don't flip. You can fall out of them, which I have done, but you can't flip over in these things. You can stand on one side of it, and if I'm not bouncing, it doesn't move. If I put my feet up here, it doesn't flip. It doesn't want to move. So having the bigger boats like this, they don't have the maneuverability of the smaller ones. They're not lightweight on land. On land, they're a little bit more of a headache, but on the water, I have unlimited stability, and that's why I like these boats a lot. I can fish from up here. I can walk around on them. and there's no problem with stability on these boats. And that's a big thing when you're looking at kayaks, is you want to see what you're going to fish for. If you're fishing for salmon, you're fishing for saltwater fish, you want to make sure you have stability for the big waves, for the big fish, anything you're going to do. If you're going to spend 18 hours a day in your kayak, you want to make sure you have a good seat, you want to make sure you can move around on it. If you're not doing any of those things, there's so many options in kayak fishing for smaller kayaks. Like I said, I have 3 more kayaks over on display over at the booth in the 1300 aisle over there at the Mainstream Tackle and Outdoors booth. There's other options for skinnier boats that you can't necessarily walk in the front and do this, but you can still stand up and be comfortable and have the stability for waves or any kind of wind that comes at you, or the big fish even. And there's been times where I've had muskie that are 4 foot that I don't pull up on the smaller kayaks, but the bigger ones I'll pull them up on my lap. If I get a gator down south, I'm not afraid to pull it up on a big kayak because I know I'm not going to go in with it. A smaller kayak, I won't even touch it. So there are trade-offs, again, when you're going for stability and comfort and stuff like that. So this kayak is made by FeelFree is the brand. This is called the Dorado 125, so it's 12.5 foot long. That's what the 125 stands for. And it's also 125 pounds, which is kind of an accident, but it worked. It's 36 inches wide, so it's super, super wide. The bottom of the hull is a cathedral hull, so it looks like an M under the water, so it suctions. That's where you get that secondary stability where it doesn't lift out of the water over here, because it suctions to the water. This one weighs about 160 the way I have it rigged up, maybe 170 with everything rigged up the way I have it. So on land, like I said, it is a little bit heavy, but this brand has a really cool feature with a built-in wheel in the back. So when I pull this out of the water, it rolls. You don't got to drag it anywhere. This one is a couple years old and the bottom is almost scratch-free. It only has scratches from branches in the water and boat launches. I don't have to drag it anywhere. So it does take a lot of the load off of you. They make a few models with that built-in wheel, and it's amazing how much it helps, because I'm not a big dude, so dragging these big kayaks around is not a lot of fun. That wheel definitely helps a lot. But when you're fishing from a kayak, well, is there any questions about the setup of the kayak yet? Any questions about how it's set up or how it's rigged? Either I'm doing a really good job or no one wants to ask a question. So we'll see. We'll see which one is true. When you're fishing in a kayak, the biggest thing I tell people is you want to make sure your accessories aren't in the way. So I always land my fish on the left side of my kayak, so you'll notice that there's no accessories on my left side besides my GoPro mount, which is in the front. I have nothing on my left side over here. Where on my right side of the kayak, I have my rod holder, which is really important. I'll show you in a second why. I have my phone mount and I have the remote holder for my motor. So when I use the motor, the remote goes right here. So on this side, you can tell I really have no room to move a fishing rod. And if I have my fishing line over here, it'll snag this, 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 or my paddle. So I make sure everything is geared towards my right side being heavy, my left side being empty. So when I land a fish, it's completely open. So you gotta be really smart with real estate on a kayak to make sure that you know what you're gonna do with it. Don't overload it. You don't wanna trip over things. You don't wanna step on something and break it and fall over. It's not fun. So when you're fishing from them, I always say the higher the seat, the better in a kayak, because you have more castability. If you're sitting really low, like this, now I have a problem casting with my accessories. Everything is really low, and I have a really hard time casting. So when you're sitting up higher in a kayak, it gives you a lot more room. Ooh, I almost went backwards. It gives you a lot more room to be able to cast. So I do like the higher up seats a lot for me personally, or I'll stand up and fish. Most of the time when I'm fishing, I'll stand up on top of the seat, get a better view, be able to sight fish better, and it's just as stable up here as it is on the floor, so that way I can sight fish, see the big trout. And I can see when they strike easier instead of sitting low in a kayak. It's always the small ones that grab first. But when you're landing one on a kayak, and this is the cool part, trout are a really good fish to show this for, because there's a thing that we call a sleigh ride. You can see my kayak's turning right now. When you get a good fighting fish on a kayak, you get to feel like you're part of the water with them. You're part of the nature with them, because you can feel how powerful they really are. In a bass boat or on land, you kind of lose that connection. You're stationary, you don't get to feel the fish swimming around. Where in a kayak, it'll move you a little bit. A big enough fish will actually turn you in circles and pull you for a while. So when you land it on your left side, this is why I say my rod holder is my most important accessory, because now my rod holder is out of the way. I can manage the fish easily. I'm not gonna step on this. I'm not gonna drop it in the lake. Man, these things are the feistiest fish. The last thing you wanna do is drop your rod in the water when you're trying to unhook a fish, because then you gotta choose which one you're gonna grab. And for some reason, as fishermen, we always grab the fish. We always think the fish is more important than our phone, than our rod, anything we drop in the water. So it's important to have the rod holder next to you. Whenever someone buys a kayak, I always say the first thing you need is a rod holder. Second thing you need is a flag on the back, which I also left in my truck. That way boats can see you. And then all the other accessories are things you can add on later on. If you need a phone holder so you can take selfies or see your phone calls without having to touch your phone, then that's important to you. If you need a GoPro mount, if you're gonna start recording yourself or put it on YouTube, then that's important to you and add that. There's cup holders, there's tablet mounts, there's different fish finder mounts. There's so many accessories on a kayak that you can put on and fully customize it for yourself. If you go over to that booth I was telling you about over there too, there's a lot of accessories. You guys can see all the different variations, how they're set up, and how they look stock. Another cool thing, there's always these small ones. Another cool thing about kayak fishing with a pedal drive is when a fish is fighting, I can move with it. So I can move forward, backwards. It helps a lot when you're fighting a bigger fish so they don't pull you around too much, or they don't pull you into a dock or pull you into a big pile of rocks. So a pedal drive is really, really handy for landing fish that pull you around. Oh, this one's another small one. So does anybody here have a kayak already that they fish out of? Is there anybody that kayak fishes? A couple? So what kind of kayak do you have? Do you know what brand it is? Pelican? So do you have track mounts on your Pelican too? So is it a sit inside? Okay. So the sit inside kayaks don't have track mounts. The sit inside kayak are the ones that you literally sit inside of. The downfall of fishing out of those is they have a canoe bottom, so they get really tippy, really rocky quick. If you flip them, they fill with water, and all your gear is gone too. Have you ever flipped yours too? Okay. So if it rains outside, you're full of water. If you flip, you're full of water. You lose everything. So the sit-on tops, they design those for fishing for that reason. If this flips over, everything is tied down or attached, and I can flip it right back over and get back in it. There'll be no water in it. If it rains outside, the water goes through all the scupper plugs and drainage ports in this kayak, and it completely dissipates immediately. So this thing is made just like a bass boat where I could fish in any condition with no problem. These ones also have the track mounts, which is these right here on the side. And it allows me to be able to take my accessories. I have slimy hands from that fish, and I can slide them up and down the tracks. So I can move accessories up and down the track really easily. I can take them out really easily. I don't have to screw into the kayak. I don't like drilling holes in plastic boats. It's like a weird rule I have. It just gives me bad feelings about putting holes in the boats. So I do it very little. So I like using track mounts. So if your kayak doesn't have them, you can add them on there. Everyone makes them. You can put aftermarket tracks on them. The sit-on-top fishing kayaks will have them in the front. They'll have them in the back. They'll have them on the sides. You can add them on everywhere too. Sometimes I'll add some on the side right here for extra camera mounts. Another cool thing is these specific accessories have a quick disconnect mount on them. These ones are called Railblaza mounts. Railblaza is the name of the company that makes them. I can take my camera mount, my phone holder, and I can swap them around that easily and move around my kayak to customize it while I'm on the water fishing. It takes no extra effort. I can move the rod holder. I can put that somewhere else if I want. So having that accessibility is really important, especially in a kayak, because like I said, real estate is really hard to come by in a kayak. I only have so much room, so much track space. I want to make sure everything's the way I want it. So I like using mounts like that where I can move them around as I go and get them out of the way when I need them out of the way. So if I'm not filming, I can take this out and put it in the kayak, and now it's out of the way. So when you're looking for kayaks, always think about what your needs are going to be, where you're going to fish, how you're going to haul it, how you're going to store it, what you're going to fish for, what kind of water you fish. So for example, if you're fishing rivers a lot, this big one is not a great river boat because you need a lot of room to turn around. In a small river, if you need to turn around, you don't want to be stuck sideways in a big boat. So the smaller ones we have on display over there are the river boats. This one's the big water boat. So I can have a lot of room to turn. I don't have to worry about it. I can take a wave sideways and it's not going to affect me. I can stand up in it while the waves are coming. It won't affect me. But in a small little pond or a river, this thing would be terrible. It would just be going back and forth like in straight lines almost. Let me turn a little bit here. Actually, you know what? There's some trout in front of me now. Let me just back up. Another cool thing about this pedal drive too is instant reverse. A lot of the other fin drive kayaks, you have to pull a lever to go in reverse, or some of them don't have reverse options even in some of the motor options. Pedal drives like this, the prop style, forward and backwards is literally that easy like a bicycle. So when I'm finding fish, I can kind of navigate my way around them. Now, does anybody smallmouth fish? We're in Michigan, so at least one. So smallmouth fishing requires a lot of sight fishing. They can usually be in clear water so they can see you from across the lake. So I like standing up a lot up here when I'm sight fishing. That way I can see a lot easier, and I don't care if you're 6 foot tall or 5 foot tall, being up higher is always gonna be easier. You can see the fish from farther away. I can spot a bigger trout that's sitting over there in the back and cast right at them and be able to see them. So that's another reason why the stable kayaks are really, really important. And then the small ones are always more aggressive. Isn't that funny how when you're fishing, you'll see a school of fish, there'll be a monster, then a small one just flies over and takes your bait right away? It's not a terrible one. And see, I always bring them over to the left side. It makes it a lot easier for me. If I bring them over to the right side, I gotta worry about them tangling up in my paddle, or that one's barely even hooked. Beautiful fish though. But that's why a stable kayak's really important too, is I wanna be able to move around easy. I wanna be able to have a lot of freedom to be able to move without having a problem of flipping. A lot of kayaks back in the day, if you move the wrong way, you're going over, so nobody fished out of them. When they came out with the bigger ones, with the bigger hulls like this, you have so much more stability where you can't tip them over. You can get water in them a little bit if you really get it rocking, but they don't go over. I think these trout are getting scared right now, making like a wave pool. So any questions about the kayak? Any questions about the kayak at all? That's awesome. I'm either doing a really good job again or no one wants to ask questions. So what made me fall in love with kayak fishing the most? Do I have time to go into a story? Yes, I do. What made me fall in love with kayak fishing the most was being able to go to those spots, like I said earlier, that the boats couldn't go. There was a lake up in Houghton Lake, right behind some property we have. It was a quarter mile back in the woods. I saw it on Google Maps and I said, I want to fish that. It looks like a fishy lake. I bet you no one's been there in a long, long time. So we drove around looking for a road. We couldn't find a road. I put my drone up in the air. I found a little path. It was probably about a half mile back in the woods. And I was like, all right, I think we can take some four-wheelers back there. So we tied up the kayaks. We have some little carts that go underneath the kayaks. We tied them up in a line like a train, and we rode about a mile back in the woods. We found a little opening in the trees that was just big enough for our kayaks, dropped them in. Within about 20 minutes, we caught our first 3 or 4 fish that probably have never been caught before. They're beautiful. Then we had beavers swimming next to us. We had deer coming up to the shoreline while we were fishing. We had ducks crawling on the back of our kayaks. It was the most immersed experience I've ever had in nature. And I realized, I was like, I feel like I'm part of their world right now. I'm not using gas or oil. I'm not being disruptive. I'm not being loud. I get to touch the water right here. I'm super close to it. And that's why I fell in love with kayak fishing, because I realized it's not about the fish I caught. It was about the adventures. It was about the places I got to see, the places I got to go, and the places I got to go that boats couldn't go. So when all my buddies had bass boats and they're like, oh yeah, it's nice, I can go 70 miles an hour. I was like, yeah, but look at this picture in the middle of nowhere. And we caught 40 fish and we saw every wildlife possible. There's eagles flying over our head. It was an incredible experience. And that's where kayak fishing really stood out to me over being in a motorized boat. And a motorized boat's great for big water. It's awesome to be able to go spot to spot. But in a kayak, you have that extra responsibility where you get on the water, you got to plan your route because you don't want to have to go 10 miles to this fishing spot, 3 miles to this spot. You don't want to bounce around. You got to really do your research. You got to figure out where you want to go before you launch because you're using your own power. You're not using gas. Even with the electric motor, I only have 2 or 3 hours of full-time use on the motor, so I'm not going to spend a whole entire day using a motor. So it gives you a little bit more, I guess responsibility is the best way to put it. Gives you more responsibility to have to learn how to fish every single lake you go on so you don't waste time, waste energy, and you get to see the best parts of the lakes. I go in little small canals that on lakes where boats can't fit into that a lot of boaters will sit on the mouth of it fishing, and I'll pass right by them and go a mile back in this canal, and I'll catch fish back there, again, that probably have never been caught, never seen a lure. So you could throw a hot dog and a hook and you'll probably catch everything in that lake. And that's why kayak fishing was so much fun. Even when we were kids and we bluegill fished, we would use cheese or bread or anything because bluegill eat anything, right? When you go in these hidden lakes that boats can't go into, the bass, the trout, they're all the same way. They haven't seen lures. They're not getting fishing pressure every single day like all the other lakes are. And a kayak is kind of the vehicle to get you to those moments. So it's really, really cool. It's a lot of fun. And I highly, highly suggest everyone at least tries kayak fishing, whether it's your thing or not, and just get to see that nature and why we all fell in love with it in the first place. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So any questions at all before we end it? And yes. I'm not going to eat these ones tonight. So I do eat fish, but I'm not going to eat these fish. I know a lot of these fish actually do get kept and they do fillet them. I know the trout pond over on that side of the building, you can catch them, and I'm pretty sure you can take them all home with you. But these ones, I don't know. I'll have to actually ask. It's a good question. Any other questions? Anything about the kayaks? With the motor, yes. So when the motor's on, so this is the end of the season, or this is the beginning of the new season, but this kayak's gonna be gone before the season starts for me. So I don't have numbers on this one, but once you put an electric motor on any kayak, it becomes a motorized vessel. So you have to do the MC numbers, it's like 15 bucks. This one also has built-in lighting on it too. My battery's dead right now, but it has red and green nav lights on the front. So you also have to have navigational lights when it's under power, so that way from anywhere in the water they can see what direction you're going. And you have to have a 360 light visible in the back, which I usually have on a flagpole right there. That way they can see from 360. Yep, 3 years. Yep. It's same as a boat. It's exact same MC numbers, same process, same everything. It's just a kayak. So there used to be a law where it was under 12 foot they didn't do it, but now it's everything under motorized. They have to do it now. Any other questions? So he asked if I'm going down a river and I hit bottom, how do the pedals come up? So every one of them is different. This one specifically, it's on a spring system, so it lifts up. When the pedal drive is down, I need about 13 inches of clearance. When the pedal drive's up, I need about 3.5. So if I hit anything, I pull that up and I use the paddle, or I just let the current drift me over whatever obstacle I was hitting. And then there's this one specifically, it's like a miniature outboard. It's got a big cast aluminum skeg on the bottom, so if I hit anything, that's what hits first. So I don't break props off, I don't hit my prop on anything. It just hits the bottom and stops me, and then I go past it and then put it back down. Any other questions? Any questions at all? So this one I've had, you asked if I trailer it, right? This one I've had in the back of my truck plenty of times, but I have an enclosed trailer because I have 4 of these. They're really heavy. These are about, like I said, about 150, 160 loaded up. So with that built-in wheel in the back, if I lower my trailer door, I can just roll it right out. But I've put these in the back of my truck. I've car topped them. Car topping them is not fun. They're really heavy, but if you have 2 people, it's not that big of a deal. But you can car top them up to, I think a standard luggage rack is usually like 150, 200 pounds. So you can car top any of them. It's just a matter of how tall you are and how tall your car is and how far you're driving, I guess, too. But I did car top this one to Tennessee and back on top of a Suburban, and it was perfectly fine. It was just took 3 of us to get it up there because it was, about a foot over my head. So, someone else had a question? Yes. Yeah, so my dog actually usually goes around the front, but it's wet, so he didn't want to do it today. But they make a 2-seater version of this too. So you can have, the back person has the pedal drives and the steering, the front person just gets to sit there and enjoy the view. It's good for kids, not usually good for married couples, because they have a lot of fights. We call them divorce boats, because everyone wants to go this way and go in and not go in. But you can easily have, so I've had my nephews when they were 5 or 6 on my lap, and I can still paddle. I don't usually pedal with them on it. I take this out. Some of the other bigger models too, there's room for them to sit in the front. You could technically I could stand in the front. So you could technically put a kid in the front. Again, you're just gotta worry about casting and hooking them and, do all that stuff. But you can do it. I've seen kids in the back. You can do it. The 2-seater is the best, safest option for sure. Or if they're small enough on your lap, that works out fine. Any other questions? Yes. The most I ever have is 5. So I have this crate back here has 5 rod holders. So I usually have 3 and 3, or 3 and 2, and then I have 1 up here if I need a 6th one. I usually keep 5 in the back. I usually only use the same 2 though. And most of us know that when we go out fishing, we bring way too much stuff. We use the same bait the whole day anyway. We use the same rod the whole day, but we need those options for our weird fisherman male ego anxieties, I guess, where you try throwing everything and nothing works. You go back to the original bait you first started throwing, and that's what you use all day. So I usually bring a panfish rod no matter where I go. So I always have pan fishing available because there's always perch or bluegill or crappie I want to fish for. Or I'll keep a pike rod with me if I'm in a pike heavy lake. The rest of them are all my bass rods. So I usually go finesse fishing 99% of the time, and then 2 my bait casters will be for moving baits, chatter baits, jigs. Depends what time of the year, jerk baits, crank baits, stuff like that. So any more questions? Yes. Yes, so when the motor I control up to 4 miles an hour. I usually troll at 1 mile an hour. Without the motor, it's super easy, obviously, just trolling. You can just pedal consistently. I do it on Lake St. Clair a lot for walleye, and you can go about 1 mile an hour without even thinking about it, so it's pretty easy. Any more questions? How long is the paddle? Oh, so there's a bungee on the side on both sides, right here. Can you see that? So it just holds it right in place right there. So it keeps it out of the way. It's really easy to operate with one hand. It has it on both sides. I took mine off on this side. Almost every fishing kayak will have at least 1, if not 2 on each side. So that way you can have it with me. I don't use the paddle besides launching and coming back in unless I hit something, but usually I navigate the lake so I don't have to use it. Any other questions? Okay, so I have a question or two now. So I'm gonna ask you guys a question. So I'm gonna ask you a question, is that okay? Have you ever fished for bluegill, crappie, or sunfish, panfish at all? You have? Do you fish off a dock mostly? What do you fish off of? A boat? Okay, so guess a number 1 through 10. 5? Okay, here's your new rod. There you go. It's a whole new rod combo. The number was 5, dead serious. So it's a whole new rod combo. Okay, I have another question. Let me see who I'm gonna ask over here. I'm gonna ask you because you're standing right here. Is that okay? Okay, what's the biggest fish you've ever caught? What kind of fish was it? Oh, really? Oh, geez. I thought you were gonna say like a bluegill or a bass or something. A mahi. Where did you catch that, in Florida? But, geez. Can I go? When are you going next? Do you ever dock fish at all? Do you ever fish off the dock for like bluegill, sunfish? Okay, so you get something too then. This right here is a brand new, this is the best fishing pole for dock fishing. So I still use these as an adult, but this rod right here, you can use on the end of a dock and jig for fish, and you can catch anything you want off of it. So here you go. No problem, man. I want to hear about that mahi-mahi afterwards though. I've never even caught one. So any other questions at all, or if you guys want to come up and see the kayak, I'm going to dock it right here for a minute. So if you guys want to come up and touch it, check it out, or ask about any accessories, anything like that, you're more than welcome. And other than that, you guys can see more info on my YouTube channel, which is The Basquatch Hunter. That's the name of the TV show, the YouTube channel, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, everything. It's all under the same name. If you Google the word Basquatch, it'll probably all come up on there. We travel the country with really cool guests. We film with UFC fighters, WWE wrestlers, American Ninja Warrior contestants, figure skaters, Olympic snowboarders. We film with some really cool people, take them fishing in my world, and I go in their world and try to do what they do for their passion, which usually doesn't work out that great, but it's entertaining. But you guys can go check it out. I'm in this kayak or my other ones every single episode, so you guys can see a lot of info on there too. And other than that, thank you guys for listening to the seminar. Appreciate it.